Welcome Rotarians and guests to the Rotary Club of Seattle, the fourth oldest and one of the world's largest Rotary clubs, where we embrace service above self and are connecting for good. Today, our program explores two distinct yet linked connections that our state has with the world. First, we are a destination for international students, and then we are a destination for diplomacy and business interests. In both today, we are going to hear the voices of youth as they look at our state. And in particular, I'm excited to be welcoming 4 international students who are currently studying with us. They will be sharing their coming to America stories with us. And to inspire us for today's program, I'm delighted to welcome Jane Tonator. And after Jane's remarks, if you'll remain standing so we can welcome our trumpeter Arnie Ness and our pianist Ken Grant to lead us in song. Jane.
Can you hear me if I? Great. We are constantly faced with differences. Differences in religions, cultures, ages, colors, political parties, and any couple who's ever come together knows differences in family traditions during the holidays. Our differences are endless. The question is, what do we choose to do with those differences? Do we use them to make us separate? To make the other bad, less than, better than? Or do we allow them to make us curious, to help us see how we are all the same, to help us welcome the world? The great Persian poet Hafiz writes on this very question. Admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, "Love me." Of course, you do not do this out loud, because otherwise someone would call the cops. Still, though, think about this great pull in us to connect. So why not become the one with a full moon in each eye that is always saying in that sweet moon language what every other eye in this world is dying to hear?
Well, the title of today's program is Coming to America, Washington State Welcomes the World. And integral to designing and, dare I say, curating today's program was David Woodward. David serves on our club board and is a driving force behind our diplomacy task force. I want to thank David for all you do for our club, how you represent us out there in the world at large, and I'm particularly grateful today for your help in this very special program as we hear the Coming to America stories of 4 students. David.
Thank you, Kathy. It's really great to be with you all today, and especially my 4 colleagues here who are university students. Really appreciate you all joining us today, and I hope you feel welcome. Ahlan wa sahlan, as we say in Arabic, bifara moeed in Persian, and in Urdu, what would we say, Ram? Khushamadid, which is like Farsi too, so that's great. Welcome, and it's great to have you with us. So basically, Kathy had a vision for providing us an opportunity to get insights into younger folks coming in from abroad, particularly from Muslim parts of the world. And so I asked colleagues in the club and in our area for some really sterling people to recommend, and so you guys come really highly recommended, so really excited to have you with us. And so I'm not going to say too much, but I'll just introduce them, give you their names and their majors and university, and then have them go ahead and tell you their backgrounds, because that's what they're here to do. So first, to the far end, we have Ms. Zainab Abdul-Majid Al-Tamimi. She's a Fulbright scholar at University of Washington in the School of Public Health, and has actually been to our club a couple of times because she lives with Jim Moore and his family, so she's seen you before. Mr. Ali Al-Ali, who is a chemical engineering student at the University of Washington, second, and then Ms. Sayeda Iram Jaffrey, MBA student at Seattle University, who Joe Phillips brought, so thank you very much. And then Ms. Shahid Falah, who is in finance and info systems, a student at Qatar University, and intern at Boeing, and originally from Syria. So it'll be very interesting to hear all of you. So Zainab, why don't you begin?
Hello, everyone. As you said, my name is Zainab Abdul Majid Al Tamimi. I come from Iraq, Baghdad specifically. I studied medicine. I did my training in pediatrics, and then I got my Fulbright scholarship to study Masters of Public Health at University of Washington. My professional goals is to use my medical background coupled with public health skills in research, health promotion, education, to help underserved communities, refugees, and ethnic minorities, specifically women. My expectations before I come to the U.S. As a Muslim woman, I thought I will be the only woman with a hijab on her head wandering around on campus, which was totally wrong. I've seen diversity of color and faith on campus, specifically in Seattle, in general, in the most beautiful way. And a funny story about my experience as a Muslim, I had a time with my friend, out and about, and I was greeted by 3 men on separate occasions. All of them said, "Assalamu alaikum, sister." And my friend turned towards me and said, "Oh, what a good way to get men to talk to you." And then a serious situation, which was not funny at all. I was encountered by someone on a bike, and then he started insulting me in the worst names I've ever heard. And that was too sad because I felt, just exhausted, and I wanted just to go back to my country. And my advice to students from Muslim countries to reach out and look for former Muslim students and ask them about resources to blend it into the society. And my advice to non-Muslim students and Rotarian members is to continue supporting Muslim students in fulfilling their education and fulfilling their dreams, and to go back to their countries and talk to their family and friends about the generosity and kindness of American people. Thank you.
Zainab, could you take 10 seconds, just tell us about where you came from, briefly.
I came from Iraq, Baghdad, and I was I was born and raised there my whole life. I came directly from Baghdad to Seattle 2 years ago.
Thank you. Ali?
Assalamu alaikum, guys. Assalamu alaikum means peace be upon you in Arabic. It's something super nice to say. So, assalamu alaikum, guys. Thank you. Okay. See, it's such a nice thing to say. I'm really getting off topic here, but I'm from Saudi Arabia, and the biggest difference between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. here is obviously the weather. In Saudi Arabia, it's so hot and dusty, but in here it's like always dark and rainy. It's so depressing. And what I noticed about Americans is that they love getting tans, So if you want to get a tan, then I highly recommend going to Saudi Arabia. You don't even have to stay there for a day, just for an hour in the afternoon. And trust me, by the end of that hour, you're not going to be brown or tan, you're going to be black. So moving on, I first came to the U.S. because my mom got a scholarship and she brought me with her. That was 8 to 9 years ago. And I remember when I first came, people assumed I was Indian because of my skin color, unless I told them otherwise. And then when I told them that I was Saudi Arabian, a few of them asked me if I was a terrorist. No, it's okay. I don't really care if someone calls me a terrorist anymore. But let me tell you this. There are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, and none of those that actually follow the faith are terrorists. What I'm trying to say is that Muslims are not terrorists. Terrorists are criminals, and we should call them out because we can't just stereotype an entire community because of the actions of people who are not actually Muslims. So it's strange because I have to distance myself from these criminals that I have nothing to do with. And so I urge all of you that to, instead of watching CNN or BBC, instead collect more information from multiple sources of news to get an unbiased perspective of the situation. And I would like to thank the board for having me here. It's such a great opportunity and a privilege to speak in front of all of you today. My name is Ali Ali, and I'm a chemical engineering major in the University of Washington. So if any of you guys here are looking for a chemical engineer in a few years, please find me. Once again, my name is Ali Ali, and thank you very much.
I thought, for a second, Ali, I thought you were going into marketing and advertising, but well done. Thank you. Iram?
Hello, everybody. I'm Sayyidaram Jafri Iram from Pakistan. I got here in December 2015 to start my MBA program at Seattle University, and I'm living with my brother here. So it was kind of a different thing for me. It's been more of an insulated experience, but I was very, very afraid. When I started here, my first ambition was to blend in, don't stand out, don't be noticed, don't have people ask questions about you. And there were challenges. For example, I was so concerned about the food, that I have halal food, that I went to the school trip to Omaha for the Warren Buffett visit. I ordered vegetarian. And I really offended the hostess that I would be in Omaha and not order the steak. But that aside, for me, it's been an incredible experience. And I don't say that because my dean is sitting here. Seattle U has been amazing. For the first almost 6 to 8 months, I tried very hard to blend in, not to stand out. And then I found out that I don't need to assimilate to integrate. It's all right to have my differences. And it's all right to talk to others about it. We need to educate others about ourselves and learn about them also. So that's been my biggest takeaway here. Talk to each other. And understand the differences, embrace the differences. We don't have to be same in order to be good or bad. So that has been my biggest takeaway. A little bit about myself, born and raised in Pakistan. I have a background in internal audit. I'm getting MBA with the partner line of a holistic view, trying to get a holistic view of everything. And at Seattle U, got an opportunity to get involved in research projects. And I enjoy that. So internal audit is my aspiration and goal.
And Iram, I have to ask you, because I know what everyone in the room is thinking, which is, you're a Muslim woman. Where's the hijab?
Yes. I'm not trying. I'm trying to blend in. I didn't wear a hijab back home, and that was one of the questions that was asked when I said that I actually don't have a lot of bad experience to talk about personally. And then they said, probably because you don't dress like the others, you don't have a hijab. I'd like to share a story because that was the first experience that I've had that's been a little negative, quite negative. And I want to thank you for being a wonderful city and embracing people. That I have just one story to talk about. This morning, the bus driver was talking about the Syrian refugees and how they are living off his tax dollars. And why don't these lazy men fight like he did for his independence? So that's what I say.
That's great. But I did want to have you illustrate that across the Muslim world, there are many, many lifestyles, different ways of dressing.
There are different lifestyles.
Yeah.
I'm a practicing Muslim. I say prayers, I keep fast, I do eat halal.
There we go. That's great. Thank you so much,
Thank
Iram.
you.
So, Shahid? Make sure to tell us about your family background. That's very interesting.
America has been my home for the past 11 months. And being a Muslim in America is making sure that I share my narrative, my fears, and my hopes with the generations of Americans. My name is Shahid Faleh. I was born and raised in Qatar, but I'm originally from Syria. About a year and a half ago, I was sitting in the hallway at my school, Qatar University, waiting for my next boring finance class. And I came across a poster for Boeing where they announced that they're offering an internship in Seattle for 6 months. I was one of the luckiest 3 students from the entire Middle East region to be selected for the business internship. I won't lie to you, before I came here, I had so many fears. My parents' fears were probably much higher than mine. They were worried about how it's easy for people to identify me as a Muslim for covering my hair. I reached the Washington State, and the first thing that I told my parents when I gave them a call, "Mom, Dad, I saw 15 hijab in the street today." I told myself that not to worry and I can easily blend. Since that day till today, no one has ever hurt me because of what my religion is. In fact, people were very friendly to me, and I was able to practice my religion very openly. I have made a lot of friends from different religions, which is something I really don't experience back home since the majority are Muslims in Qatar. I remember I was once asked by my colleague to join her for a beach house with her family for a weekend. And she told me not to worry because she talked to her kids and she explained them about myself and that I'm gonna look different for them because of the way I dress. I was really surprised, not because she did mention that to her kids, but because I was really happy that Americans are teaching their kids how to respect and how people are equal to each other from such a young age. Besides that, I didn't get any looks from her naughty kids. My message here is that the stereotypes that I drew in my mind by watching the TV about the US were all wrong. Sometimes you won't believe something until you experience it yourself. For me, that was one of them. Living in America will probably remain one of the best experiences in my life. If you're a Muslim in America, then you might have been told that there is a ceiling between you and your American dreams, and that you will never be able to accomplish all your dreams because of who you are. Well, I'm telling you from now, there is no ceiling, and you can easily approach your dreams. My future goal is to seek for a master's degree, and having a US master's degree will definitely be one of my priorities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shahid. Well, we're going to have you back another time when you're Rotary members, and we'll hear a lot more from you. Thank you all so much. It was delightful. Let's go ahead that way.
Thank you, Zaneb, Ali, Shahad, and Aram, for sharing your Coming to America stories with us. Today, our special guest is Cyrus Habib, the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Washington. The Lieutenant Governor was born, I'm going to share a little bit of background, was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and moved with his family to Washington State at the age of 8. He grew up in East King County and graduated from the Bellevue International School before attending Columbia University and Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar and Yale Law School. He was also a Truman Scholar and a Soros Fellow. After receiving his law degree, the Lieutenant Governor returned to Washington State to practice law, helping technology companies raise venture capital funds and license their software. Before being elected as Washington State's 16th Lieutenant Governor in 2016, just last fall, Cyrus Habib represented East King County in the Washington State Legislature. He has been recognized by Governing Magazine for his bipartisan approach to government, which I think we would all welcome. He is a 3-time cancer survivor, and he has been fully blind since the age of 8. His parents immigrated to the United States from Iran before he was born. In fact, many of us may know his mom, who's a Bellevue Rotarian. He is both the first and the only Iranian-American official to hold statewide office in the United States. The Washington Post has named him one of the top 40 rising political stars under the age of 40. Please help me welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Cyrus Habib.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's so wonderful, Madam President. Thank you for having me. Thank you to all of you here. This is, whenever I come as a guest to Seattle 4, it's always so overwhelming how many of you there are. I mean, the last time this many people got together in Seattle was when there was a mayoral forum last night. I'm not here to announce my candidacy, by the way, but I will tell. I just want to say, first of all, a word of thank you to David Woodward, who invited me here. I want to acknowledge and thank the members of our Consular Corps who are here with us today, and those who have come together to develop a diplomatic task force here based at Rotary, but on behalf of our entire state and our community. It is always wonderful to meet with our consuls general who represent our distinguished friends and allies all over the world, and who do such an amazing job not only of representing those countries and those communities and those peoples, but integrating into our state and being an integral part of our community, our priorities here in Washington State. They're a great partner to us. So let me just ask everyone here to give a round of applause to all the diplomatic officials who make Seattle their home. Now, you heard a little bit about my story, and I gave so many stump speeches last year. I'm not going to do that for you today, but except to say that the story that I've been able to live out, the one that on TV you might have heard me refer to as the road from Braille to Yale. It started when I was in Maryland and lost my eyesight, first in my left eye and then in my right eye at age 8. I often joke that happened in 1989. That's when I was 8 and became blind, so all 8 years I could see did take place in the 1980s. All my visual memories are from the 1980s, and so everyone here still looks like Cyndi Lauper and Boy George. But, to be able to go from that experience and to learn how to advocate for myself, and ultimately to be able to go on to do those things that you just heard our president here describe, it required a commitment and a dedication to expanding opportunity for every Washingtonian. That's what was the magnet that brought my parents to this country, and ultimately it's what allowed me to travel this road and to be able to stand here before you. It was that Republicans and Democrats had come together in our country and in our state, because there are many parts of the world, as my parents knew, as many of you know, many parts of the world, and even some parts of this country, where if you were a 3-time cancer surviving, fully blind Iranian American from a mixed religion immigrant family, you might not have access to opportunity and to inclusion. But we're different here. And so I know Rotarians well enough. There's 2 things I know. One is I know you're awfully polite. You're far too polite to ask the question that's on your mind, which is, what does a lieutenant governor do anyway? I know you guys are. You'll get fined for asking that question. The second thing I know about, so I'm going to tell you in a second, the second thing I know about Rotarians and Rotary that I remember as a Rotarian myself is the 4-way test. So let me connect those and tell you, because we have our own 4-way test in my office. The work that we do, first of all, I preside over the state Senate. I'm the president of the Senate. I resolve parliamentary and procedural questions, cast tie-breaking votes, chair the committee that decides what bills get voted on, and make appointments to 50-some boards and commissions. I fill in for the governor when he's out of state, as he will be here for the next 5 or 6 days, and partner with him on a whole host of initiatives. And the other 3 areas that we work on are trade and economic development, veterans and disability, employment, and expanding college readiness and creating a college-going culture. Those are ones that I identified and that are listed in statute. But here's the 4-way test that we use when we decide what to do in these areas. 1, does it expand opportunity? 2, is it innovative or experimental in some way? 3, is it non-symbolic? And 4, is it non-duplicative? Because there are plenty of politicians who do things that are symbolic and do things that are duplicative. And we wanted to make sure that we're being additive in this role, working on behalf of everyone in Washington State. So today we're talking about our role as a city and a state that's internationally focused, that's global, that's welcoming. And that's at the heart of so much of what we've done and what we want to do together. And so before I give you my kind of entreaty and take your questions, let me tell you some of the things that we have done just in these first 4 months. So when I was approached by an international baccalaureate teacher, one of our high schools in Edmonds, and told that Congress had cut the funds that pay for low-income kids on free or reduced lunch, to take advanced placement and international baccalaureate exams. The exam fees, which for IB exams could be upwards of $100-some per exam. That money wasn't going to be available this year. We figured out, could we go to the legislature and get the money? I think you all know the answer to that. Could we do that rapidly and nimbly? No. Could we get the money from the Office of the Superintendent? No. So I formed a public-private partnership in late January, and thanks to the generosity of companies that are represented here, Microsoft, Boeing, the Schultz Family Foundation, Alaska Airlines, Nordstrom, the Seahawks, and others, we raised a combined public-private fund of $850,000, and we're able to announce that every kid in Washington State on free or reduced lunch could take as many advanced placement and IB exams for free as they wanted to, and this last week, 15,000 of them did just that for free. For free. Now, why is that important? Why is that important? Because international baccalaureate education, look, I went to the Bellevue International School in Bellevue. And if you grow up in Bellevue, you get some of those opportunities. But we know those opportunities aren't available all over the state, and particularly to certain student populations. And yet we know how mightily important it is to be globally minded, and that work needs to start early on. So by the time they become, I know we can't be political, by the time they become voters, they do have that cosmopolitanism, that respect for other cultures, that respect for the global rule of law, and for exchanges, the types of things that you just heard from these courageous young people just a minute ago. Secondly, when the Muslim travel ban was announced, I felt as the only person whose family, the only elected official at a state level or higher, anywhere in the country, whose family would have been affected, and in fact was affected until the stay by that order, I had to speak out. So working with Governor Inslee and of course our Attorney General Bob Ferguson, we came up with a coordinated strategy. It was a legal strategy. I authored an op-ed in the Washington Post telling my family's story, that my father would have never been able to come to study at the University of Washington under this travel ban, either the first one or the second one that we're litigating now. My mother would have never been able to come to this country, and I would have never been able to be born here and travel the path that I have. So my father would have never been able to give back at the Boeing company until he lost his life just last year. My mother could have never become a King County Superior Court judge, and certainly I would never be able to be in a position to serve all of you. I felt it was important to tell that story, but we wanted to also do more. So my office became a clearinghouse for those affected by the travel ban in Washington State to help connect them with legal and other services. Third is supporting international trade. And this is an issue that's become, as you all know, increasingly troubling and politicized in a way that it never was before. And there are many people in the Republican Party and in my own party for whom the global understanding and system of the past 70 years unfortunately has become anathema, and so we see a type of not only nationalism, but really truly it's worse than nationalism, it's parochialism that turns away, whether it's anti-immigrant policies on the right or some of the anti-trade policies that we hear on the left and the right. I know how important it is to our state, where 40% of our economy is directly related to trade. There are states where there are losers in this global system, and higher education is the answer to that problem, not turning the clock back. But our state's not one of those. We're one of the winner states. And so that's why I travel all around. I was just in Calgary speaking, keynoting the U.S.-Alberta Trade Summit to make the case to our Canadian neighbors that no matter what they hear from D.C., at the subnational level, at the state level, Washington State is open for their business. We want to be doing that work, and I need your help as business leaders and community leaders to continue to push in both parties for international engagement, economic, cultural, and educational. Fourth and finally, we know we need more global exchanges. This is something that David Woodward has worked on. This is something that the Safrui family, Fauzi and Adele, who are Rotarians here, have worked on, and many others here. And so my office is now building a program that will allow low-income high school kids to travel overseas for a summer and perfect their language skills while gaining college credit, but most importantly, for kids who may never have left the state to be able to leave our country and get to know others from around the world. I think this type of international engagement, it not only has it lost a certain type of currency and salience in our political environment, but I know it's integral to our economic, cultural, and social success as a city, as a state, and as a country. And so I want to close by saying this before I take your questions. We need Rotary more than ever. I don't know the numbers. I didn't have the chance to ask my staff to look this up. I would have, if I were a little more organized, maybe I would have. But Rotary and Kiwanis and Lions Club and similar international service clubs don't have the same type of subscription rates and growth rates that I think we've seen in previous decades. But what's unfortunate about that isn't just that we all believe in putting service above self and doing all the hard work that you guys do every day, networking and building relationships. We need international organizations that build goodwill more than ever. Because if we want to solve problems like terrorism and global poverty, cybersecurity, if we want to deal with the challenge of climate change, we need to work together across borders. And so when I think about the parochialism, the nationalism, the turning away from trade and global institutions and diplomacy, one ingredient that I know is vitally important in resolving that, in taking us back in the right direction, is organizations like Rotaries. All the people in this room. So every time you welcome visitors from other countries or the Rotary clubs, every time you go overseas with a Rotary trip, or you just visit a Rotary club on your other travels, you are a consul general for our state. You are an ambassador for our country. You are doing that work. Rotary is doing that work. Rotary has a track record of showing that it can solve major global health and other challenges. Let that be a model to the rest of our state, to the rest of our country, that international engagement is the answer, not a turning in upon ourselves. So I want to thank you all, and I want to ask you if there are opportunities or ways in which we can work together to find global opportunities for your businesses, for your organizations, ways in which we can connect my work with yours, please do not hesitate to let me know. Similarly, if you want to work on veterans and disability employment or higher ed issues, likewise, please come and let me know. Consider me a friend to you, a resource to all of you. I'm going to stop there and now take any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm the president,
Yes,
and
thank
I'll
you.
be your secretary.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so
everyone
much.
is standing
Thank you
right
so
now.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
The Lieutenant Governor has agreed to take some questions, and we have our mic handlers out on the floor. Just help me see where the first question is going to come. All right. Past President Todd is on his way.
Incredibly inspirational words. For 10 years, I've been taking, along with the team, young people to Guatemala who happen to be low-income, service-oriented, high-achieving kids. And I can attest to the fact, and it's hard to describe, it's hard to quantify, but I highly encourage you, sir, to keep that particular aspect up for young people, especially who are needs-based, who are low-income. Eastern Washington kids from those small towns, please get them overseas someplace. It's a life-changing experience. I've seen it. I've lived it with them. It's just unbelievable. And I'd encourage anybody here in this room, if you have an opportunity to take kids overseas, to be with them and just observe it, please do. It's truly amazing. I just want
It
to make that
really
comment.
is, and
Thank you.
Guatemala is a great country to do that. I went and studied there for 2 months after the bar exam to get all those mnemonic devices out of my head. You know what? Guatemala is a great place to learn Spanish, but the irony is they have 23 official languages in Guatemala. Such a deep respect for their indigenous communities. It's a wonderful place to visit, but it's an even better place to be educated and to learn. Thank you.
President Kathy?
Question here on the left.
Lieutenant Governor, my name is David Brenner. My question to you is, how do we get back to the vital center? You know, how can we become a state where the center holds again?
Let me begin by saying this. I think, first of all, I think it's a confusing time because there's party realignments, right? So I'm not sure we know where the center is, because I'm not actually sure we know what's left and what's right at the moment. I mean, we've seen in this president during his candidacy an extremely unconventional articulation of what it means to be a Republican that I think many of my conservative friends, many of my Republican friends don't recognize. I think in the Democratic Party, we've similarly seen some developments that you know, a Lyndon Johnson or even Jimmy Carter would find strange from their political moment. So we're in a realignment right now. What I would say is, let's begin, and this is what I try to do in the state Senate. Look, my first ruling in the Senate was against my own party, and I hated to do it, but my own former colleagues in the Senate Democratic Caucus attempted a maneuver. I couldn't rule in their favor. I 3 weeks ago, ruled with them on what you would consider the Democratic side, and said that a Senate rule that tried to get around what was held to be unconstitutional, the Tim Eyman supermajority tax rule, that was unconstitutional itself. So I've ruled on both sides. I think what we need to do is what I try to do in the Senate, which is at least foster an environment where we can talk to one another and be civil. One of my best friends in the world, whose foster license I signed on to and endorsed as a referral for him, is a member of this club, now State Representative Paul Graves, a Republican from Issaquah. He couldn't be here today. He wanted, I said, are you going to be there, Paul? I might call on you or call you out. And he's at the Maple Valley Chamber in his district. But I'll tell you, Paul and I have had a deep friendship across party lines and have worked together in a civil way. We disagree, but so I would say, rather than trying to figure out where the center is right now, because that's so difficult, let's at least create those environments where we can discuss these ideas respectfully.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, Paul Jajik, thank you for coming today.
Good to see you, Paul. Thank you.
Got a question for you that's kind of a combination of public policy and your own personal experience. Senator Ben Sasse has a book out. I've heard him talk about it here the last couple of days, The Vanishing American Adult, talking about the need for people to grow up taking care of themselves or becoming more able to take care of themselves and not rely upon others. Probably a bad summary of his book. And I've heard you talk about how important government services and government supports were in your life, yet your story, and you alluded to it, is one of self-reliance. So could you talk with us about that combination of charting your own path, but having public policy that supports you and doesn't take away that need for you to be your own author of your life?
Well, I would just, I would say that the one correction I would say is, I wouldn't say the lesson of my life is self-reliance. In fact, you know, the easiest thing in the world, I often make this joke that if I'd been a Republican, this is the old Republican Party, maybe not the new one. If I'd been a Republican, and you know, I could kind of skyrocket to the top of the party by saying that, you know, I was able to do all this stuff on my own. And that I didn't get any government help at all or government services. And the simple fact of the matter is I know that's not true. It's not something that's true in my life. I needed state support in public schools, services from the state, but I also needed lots of support from charities and nonprofits and folks in Rotary and ultimately my parents to advocate for me. So here's what I would say about it, is it's not one or the other. What it is some of you may have heard me tell the story. I'll just abbreviate and say, when I was in 3rd grade, all the kids, what's everyone's favorite time? When you're in elementary school, what's your favorite time of day? Recess. So all the kids would go out and play at recess, and knowing that I had recently become blind and that I think more importantly, my mother was a litigator, the school didn't want me playing with the other kids, so they kept me by the side of the school instead of 5 feet off the ground in the playground, the jungle gym. I went home and told my parents what had happened. My mom took me with her to the school to learn how to be an advocate for myself, and she said, I'm gonna take my son to your school on the weekends and teach him how to get around, and he's gonna learn it like any other kid knows it. And she said, it may happen, he may slip and fall, and he may even slip and fall and break his arm. That's a fear that any mother has. But she said, I can fix a broken arm, I can never fix a broken spirit. Well, the lesson there is that, yes, people with disabilities and many others have to work hard, work harder, and have to do things differently and be creative. But at the same time, it's our job to make sure that those opportunities are there so that they can work hard and be creative. Just in the state Senate, as lieutenant governor, look, how crazy am I? I picked a job where one of the core functions of the job is being able to call on people when they stand up, right? Like, I knew, because I know about this country and I know about this state, I didn't even think twice about it. And thank God none of you voters did either. But so I got elected, and you know what? We figured it out. We put touch screens on every senator's desk, so when they stand and say, Mr. President, to be recognized, they now touch the screen on their desk, and their names show up in Braille at the computer and right in front of me at the front of the Senate, and I can independently, without a spotter, determine who to call on. We can do these things. It takes a combination of imagination and resources. It takes a combination of hard work, creativity, and opportunity. And so I would say it's not self-reliance, it's interdependence. And I think if you do that the right way, you do create a no excuses culture, so that then, if I screw up, it's on me, right? Like, the names are there in Braille, and then it's on me. So I think that ultimately does lead to more personal responsibility.
Question from Jeffrey Borick on the left here.
Jeff Borick, Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your service. Thank you for being here speaking with us today. I don't want to become too personal, but with blindness, with your health challenges, what can you share in terms of the resiliency that's obviously part of your core to help you bounce back from these challenges?
I don't, okay, because we're all friends here, and there isn't I don't think there's a Chatham House rule around Rotary where we all keep the secret, right? But in any case, let me tell you something. When I decided to run for the State House of Representatives, I met with a very prominent politician in the Democratic Party. He's still in politics. He's still prominent. And I said, look, this is what I want to do. I want to run for the State House of Representatives. Would love to have your support when I do. And he knew my background, and he said, well, it's great. You seem really smart. Would love to have love to have you run, and you could be a factor and all this stuff. He said, but I just want to say, you do know that when you run for office, you got to go doorbelling, and you got to go knock on people's doors and talk. That's a big part of how you win. How is that ever gonna work? And this is someone in my own party whose public message and policy positions don't reflect that perspective. But one-on-one, this is what he said, right? And so I said, well, look, I almost said this person's name right now. That would have been a mistake. I said, look, I don't know how to say this without being, offensive. I learned how to get around the New York subway system on my own. I learned how to live. I went to Guatemala to learn Spanish on my own. I went to Oxford, which was built way before the ADA, right? And to get around on my I know you don't probably hear this very often, but running for the State House of Representatives is not even close to the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And so I don't know what to tell you other than to say, because of my parents, I think because of how they were, they decided early on, they told me this later, that they were so afraid for my life and for what would happen to me growing up. But they said they decided between themselves that they would never let their fear become my fear. And somehow, in that early experience, I learned how to just not even factor it in. I don't even know how to tell you. I don't even notice it when people kind of say, like, well, how would you do that, or why? Because that's what I said about running for lieutenant governor, just trusting that we'd figure out how to do the recognizing senators. I was late coming here because I was keynoting the children's play garden luncheon down at the Four Seasons. They're doing the same thing. They're instilling those lessons for 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds with disabilities right now. So I'm so excited that this is now grown so much bigger, because not everyone has the benefit of a 24-hour-a-day pro bono attorney like I did growing up. And so we need to wrap around kids and give them that confidence from an early stage.
Thank you. I, for one, have been very inspired today with our Coming to America stories and how Washington State welcomes the world. I want to thank our students who shared their personal stories with us today. I hope it opened our hearts and our minds to the experience of young people who visit our country. As you've often heard us say here at the podium, we have a diplomacy task force, and actually we have a table here today of members of that group. There are over 40, maybe 45 members in our club, and I extend an invitation to anyone who isn't a member of our diplomacy task force to join us, because we're focused on how we engage with the world. And accordingly, I'd like to acknowledge members of the Consular Corps who are here with us today. Consul General Moon from the Republic of Korea, Director General Yao from Taiwan, and the Honorary Consul General from Brazil, Pedro Costa. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
They serve on a blue ribbon panel, which is a subset of that diplomacy task force. And I'm pleased to announce today that the Lieutenant Governor has accepted our invitation to join our blue ribbon panel. So you'll continue to be connected to Seattle Rotary. So thank you for
Do
that.
I get makeups for it? I just want to know. Do I get makeup? Thank you so much. Thank you.
So here in the closing moment, my call to action for all of us. We are Rotarians, so by definition, we are citizens of the world. So let's make a point, each of us, to be welcoming, to be our own welcomers to members who are from around the world who are here today, and do that in everything we do. So we're adjourned. And
thank you so much.